If you've been having questions on which HDB type to go for, then this video is for you. At some point after 30 years old, conversation amongst friends at gatherings or at dinner tables would slowly start to revolve around property. Whether it's the BTO queue that they just got or a resale HDB that they have just renovated, and you might be over there wondering what's the difference between the two options and which path should you take. While some people may even just follow whichever their group of friends are doing, others may leave it up to fate and drop in ballots for all the BTOs. But before you make a decision, here's a comparison of both options for you to compare against and then decide which one suits you better. And before we start, I would like to emphasize that everyone's circumstances is different and there's no one-size-fits-all strategy. The young couple that wants to start a family early will have different priorities from a dual income no kids couple. And also to provide some context, let's talk a bit on grants first prior to the pros and cons of HDB and BTO. HDB in Singapore is public housing and is seen as a public resource to help Singaporeans with affordable housing solutions. And this assistance comes in either form of a grant or a subsidized flat or both. And this is generally classified in a first-timer or second-timer system. First-timer are people aiming to get their first public housing and will be granted benefits such as a subsidized flat or additional grants to aid them in their first homes. And second-timers are people who have already utilized the subsidized flat chance or have already taken up grants before. And as a first-timer for BTO flats, you will be eligible for Enhanced CPF Housing Grant or EHG. This is the primary grant for BTOs, providing up to $120,000 right now at the point of this video, depending on your average monthly household income, with a cap at $9,000. The lower the income, the higher the grant amount from HDB. And as a first-timer for resale HDB flats, you will be eligible for these grants. Number one, we have the CPF Housing Grant. Because you are not getting a direct HDB subsidy seen in BTOs, first-timer families can receive up to $80,000 for a 2 to 4 room flat or $50,000 for a 5-room or larger flat. And number two, you have the Enhanced CPF Housing Grant, which is EHG just like the BTOs. And this again offers $120,000 based on the monthly household income with a cap at $9,000. Again, the lower your income, the higher the grant amount. And number three, we have the Proximity Housing Grant or PHG. If you are buying a resale flat to live near your parents within 4 km, you get an additional $20,000 or $30,000 if they are staying in the same flat as you. And these grant amounts that we just spoke of are assuming that it is a Singaporean couple that is buying it. If you are buying it as a single or with a non-citizen partner, divide these amounts by half. And whether it's getting a BTO flat or using grants with a resale flats, you will be utilizing your first-timer chance. How do you then become a second-timer? If you have already taken a round of grants or have already gotten a BTO and are going for another subsidized flat option, then you will be considered a second-timer for that purchase. And now, more interestingly, is what happens when you're a second-timer. You will be subjected to a resale levy. And the easiest way to understand whether you will be affected by a resale levy is to focus on what you're buying next. If it's a subsidized flat from HDB, which is a BTO in this case, or a brand new EC from a developer which is also governed by HDB, then you will be subjected to a resale levy if you are a second timer. Resale levy can also only be paid in cash and it reduces your overall equity from your first asset. So think of this like a government clawback on your initial subsidies before you get new ones. And here's the list of resale levies depending on your previous flat type. The topic of ECs will be covered in another video, but just leaving this here so that you get a sense of all possible resale levies permutations. And so in summary, here's the complete list of grants for BTOs and HDB resale at a glance. And now let's move on to the pros and cons of each section, starting with the BTOs. The BTO system was designed with a few considerations, or at least I believe it to be so. And the first one being to provide affordable housing for couples in their preferred estate. Over time, it has turned into some form of lottery system in the eyes of buyers because they knew they could flip the BTO BTO for massive profits after MOP. So I guess as time went by, estates didn't really matter as much as before. The second reason is due to a Singapore housing policy crossed with aging population. With life expectancy on the rise, the government foresaw a potential problem that the older leases of flats may not accommodate newer buyers till their final breath. And that is why the government is steering younger people away from older flats and using price as an incentive to entice them to get a fresh 99-year-old lease BTO flat from them, which explains why a brand new flat can cost significantly lower than a resale flat in the same area. And this next reasoning is what I thought aligns with national policy. And of course, with declining birth rates, I would think that this is to incentivize couples to start their families young by enabling them with the subsidized housing and grants. But I guess the long-term repercussions could be selecting the wrong life partner at a young age, and maybe, just maybe, that's why there is a rising trend of divorces in Singapore. And so for the list of pros for BTOs, you have number 1, a fresh 99-year lease from the government. The lease starts from the day you collect the keys rather than the land acquisition dates, unlike private properties. And seeing that how HDB prices moves is it's kind of like a number of years lease left kind of price mechanism, so you will be enjoying the full value of a 99-year lease property. And number 2, a BTO is almost guaranteed to be lower priced than any other resale in the area because it is subsidized housing and it is the government's incentive into getting you to buy a younger flat. And number 3, you will have a brand new unit, which means you save on renovation costs and don't have to worry about popping tiles or leaking things unless in very rare cases like this.
Solid water feature.
And number 4, you are almost guaranteed to enjoy some form of financial gains when you sell in the future due to your low buy-in price. And resale buyers are generally more inclined to buy newer flats sometimes because they too also will save on future renovation costs and won't have to contend with that as compared to an aging flat in comparison. And number 5, finally, one of the biggest benefits to getting a BTO would be the ability to apply for it first, even if you don't have the full 25% down payment, or even if you are just starting out in the job market. This is because it has its own progressive payment scheme which collects payments at various milestones. However, take note that this only means that you are delaying the rest of the 25% down payment till the key collection date. Unfortunately, it is no longer the case of taking a 90% loan for your BTO flats like the pre-COVID days. And now moving on to the cons of the BTO. Number 1, the build time waiting costs. Whether it's starting a new life or a family, this will be put on hold until you collect your BTO keys. The government incentive of subsidized flat comes with a price, and that is your time. And number 2, on top of construction time, you will still be required to fulfill the full 5-year MOP, meaning that you could be potentially 28 years old when applying for the BTO and only transiting to your next property at 38 years old. And number 3, BTOs are in fact very much luck dependent because of how oversubscribed it is. And with some people trying even more than 10 times and failing, this number of tries plus the construction time plus the MOP could seriously hamper your life planning if you are not very lucky. And number 4, depending on the location you want, if you want central area or even better locations in today's BTO system, then you will have to contend with a 10-year MOP period. And now also apparently up to a 20% clawback, at least depending on which project you're going for. And it seems like the government is treating BTO as a precious public resource now and is clamping down on people solely looking to turn a quick profit after 5 years. And next, depending on what your past purchases were like, you could potentially be incurring resale levy, and that could be a huge impact to your financial plans if not accounted for. And finally, the most obvious con for BTO would be the size. The BTO you're getting is almost likely to be smaller than a house you grew up in, so if you're used to space and want the same space for your future self or family, then you will have to consider this as well. And now moving on to Resale HDB, this segment of the market has grown quite a bit since the COVID period and has been in the spotlight for the past few years. However, it seems like it's finally slowing down as seen in the last few quarters. But then again, our minister has said let's keep a watchful eye on prices before concluding whether the prices has indeed gone down for good. Anyway, resale units are mostly stayed in for at least 5 years because of MOP requirements, and depending on how well kept the unit is, you may may not have to do a major renovation. The list of pros for HDB resales are: number 1, your timeline certainty. Because the timeline is fixed, you can plan for your renovations or even the next Christmas gathering around that time frame. You won't be left guessing whether it's gonna be a 2026 or 2027 for key collection. And number 2, you will be eligible for more grants in place of a subsidized flat, whether it's the CPF housing grant, which goes up to $80,000, or even the proximity housing grant, which goes up to $30,000. And number 3, you deal with the individual seller, and prices can be negotiated harder depending on the seller situation or market conditions based on supply and demand. And number 4, you can almost move in as quickly as 3 months instead of waiting for years to kickstart your life. And I feel like this is a bit understated, because if you're planning to have a family young, you can do it at 28 years old via the resale route instead of waiting till 33 for the BTO to start your family. Some people would see this as a bigger gain comparatively to the BTO financial gains, so different strokes for different folks. And number 5, resale flats, if it's 20 years old and beyond, it would likely be in a more mature neighborhood, which means that you have access to multiple amenities like coffee shops, hardware shops, or wet markets, and some people just can't live without those. And lastly, one of the biggest reasons and driving factors for resale HDBs, especially the older ones, is the sheer size of the house, which is something that we, as in our generation, may be more familiar with while growing up. Some couples in their mid to late 30s are opting to go for an EA or an EM because they want space and they want the kids to have that huge bedroom like them while growing up. And now moving on to the cons of resale HDBs. Number 1, you will likely be paying a price premium for it compared to BTO. And this price premium can sometimes be significantly higher depending on the neighborhood you're looking at, and the grants don't help you bridge this gap at all. And number 2, depending on the condition of the unit, the potential cost of renovations can inch you off your budget if you're buying an original condition unit. With reno costs climbing, this sometimes can make even the resale market look unaffordable unless you're going for a renovated, well-kept unit. And number 3, you will be subjected to HDB valuation, which is the potential cash over valuation, and sometimes the valuation is very low and the sellers still stick to their price. Then your dream home could potentially cost you more cash than you're prepared for. And number 4, decaying lease, because the resale flat lease balance may not cover you up to 95 years old, and you may be required to down pay more for the property or even have a limiter on the amount of CPF that you can use for it. And if you're in your 20s this year and looking at resale HDB, take note of this, because this could be the difference between affording the HDB comfortably to simply unaffordable. And lastly, you're restricted by the units on the market. For an example, if you want an EM in Bishan North and you viewed all available listings and none of them feel right, you will have to start camping on Property Guru for a new listing in hopes that it will be something that you're looking for. And as you can see, the pros and cons are fairly matched for BTOs and resale HDB. It really depends on which profile you are and exactly what you're looking out for your property, and potentially for some people, age might also be a factor. So let's go through some of these profile examples. We start with profile number 1, which is the ideal textbook Singaporean couple, right? The Singaporean dream, a young engaged couple, maybe JC sweethearts, maybe 26 years old this year, currently living with their parents with only one of them working, bringing their total household income to $3,800 a month because they have just started work. This couple would likely go for a BTO because at this point they wouldn't have enough for the resale HDB down payment and still have plenty of time on their side because they are very young. They would then qualify for $80,000 on the EHG, and that would easily serve as part of the initial down payment required for the house. And since they have a safety net, which is living with their parents, they can afford the 4 to 5 years wait and slowly build up their equity to pay the remaining 25% down payment upon key collection. And they will also be buying into tomorrow's prices at today's BTO entry, and will have the flexibility of unlocking their BTO's capital upon MOP in the future. The only downside to this plan would be having to select your life partner at a young tender age, and honestly this may result in a long-term repercussion if it's the wrong choice. And pillar number 2, we have the DINKS, the dual income no kids, and they are maybe a couple in their 30s that have found true love at a later stage of life and is dying to start their life together because they want to begin parenthood immediately. They would not wish to get a BTO because that could potentially mean that they get their house in the late 30s only, and these couples would likely go for a resale BTO flat instead because maybe time is not on their side biologically to them, and the gift of family outweighs that of potential financial gains in the future. And at this point of their life, they are also more stabilized in their careers and would most likely have enough CPF or savings to afford the resale down payment. And for people or cases like that I've seen, they would rather spend now to settle the housing first and then focus on building up their lives and their careers from a home base. And for people like that, time usually holds a bigger weightage compared to potential financial gains in the future. And then we have profile number 3, the family that never stops trying. We have this group of die-hard must get BTO couples that feel compelled that they must get their BTO else they cannot move on with their life. And this type of couple, though very rare, still exists. They could potentially have already started parenthood and have a kid and are either staying at their parents' place together or are renting a place outside because of the promised pot of gold from the potential future BTO. And if they're staying with their parents, then it's fine. That's because they are not incurring any costs and they are probably very comfortable with the existing living arrangements and can stay as long as they need till they get lucky with their BTO ballots. But if they are incurring rental, then it is probably not ideal because every dollar spent on rental is money that could have been funding the family activities or even potential renovations for the new place when they eventually get it. And for couples who are renting thinking that their future BTO profits can offset this rental amount, they should instead just go for a resale HDB unit. Why? Because the mortgage will definitely be lower than the rental that they are paying and they will eventually get a portion of this mortgage back when they sell the property in the future. And on top of that, it's not like they're going to be buying the resale property at full price. They still will get grants if they are eligible for it. And so if you are currently renting while waiting for your BTO chance, this is your sign to go to the resale market instead. And profile number 4, we have the condo downgrader. BTOs are not just for young people, but some people have spent their entire lives in a private property and saved their first timer chance to get their final home as a cheaper alternative so that they can retire in peace with their private property gains. But take note that you can only go for a BTO if you have disposed of your private property after a 30-month wait out period, and if 30 months or 2.5 years is too long for you and you are 55 years and below, then you can opt for the resale option, which at the time of recording allows you to downgrade to a 4-room or smaller flat immediately. However, if you are below 55 years old, then the 15-month wait out period would still apply to you. And take note that this 15-month wait out only allows you to be eligible to purchase a HDB flat, whereas the 30-month wait out allows you to be eligible for grants or subsidized flats. So 2 different things altogether. And there you have it, the various pros and cons for HDB resale and BTO units. There is no one-size-fits-all solution and it very much depends on your current circumstances and what your priorities are for housing. And here's the summary of pros and cons for BTO and HDB resale at a glance. Don't feel too pressured by society to select which choice to go for, because sometimes I feel like we are being too transactional and forget that a home is our place of rest and peace and not just a piggy bank to rely on for the future. And don't be too fixated on the potential BTO flip, because sometimes in life you may get richer in other ways by maybe like starting that family you've always wanted since young, or enjoy a big enough place without the hassle of constantly upgrading properties throughout your life. And that's it. If you like content like this, consider subbing to the channel. We release real estate videos weekly. I'm ASAP and I will see you in the next video.